About 10 years ago, when I was stationed in Japan, I had an experience that still makes the hairs on my arms stand on end. I was sleeping one week at night about midnight. I lived in a dormitory with other military members, and this particular night, I woke up from my sleep to see a dark figure standing in my room. At first, it didn't bother me because my friends would frequently come into my room at all hours of the day without knocking, and I thought it was one of them just messing with me. So I called out to them to let them know that I saw them and the joke was over. However, at that time, the figure laid down on its belly and started to crawl towards my bed. Still, I thought it was a friend playing a joke on me, so I let them know the joke wasn't funny. However, each time I would call out to the figure, it would stop and stay very still, and then start crawling towards me when I stopped speaking. I quickly became frightened and got out of the bed and turned on the lights, and when I did, the figure disappeared and was never seen again. I'm currently a student studying in Japan, and I was invited to my friend's house in the Fuki Prefecture, on the western coast of Japan, one of the most haunted prefectures in the nation. It has more graves than any other location in Japan, and is home to the infamous Chernobyl Cliffs, a place where people commit suicide by jumping into the ocean. I was with my friend and several of his classmates at around 2 a.m. in a family restaurant when the subject of ghost pictures came up, and several of them said that they had taken pictures at the Chinbo Cliff and had seen the spirits that float around the area. My friend could even see them, a couple who jumped off together, standing on the edge of a cliff. I did not believe him, and I challenged them to accompany me up the cliffs. There was 8 of us in all. About 5 of them refused to go, but the others managed to convince 3 of them. The other 2 that had refused to go had very bad experiences there. One of them was a victim's cousin, and the other took a picture, only to have the ghost cling to his shoulder, and was plagued with nightmares. He saw people throwing themselves off a cliff. The nightmares continued until he visited a shrine where he was blessed and a Buddhist priest performed a ritual that would send that spirit on his way. We take the spirits of the past very seriously. On the 13th, 14th, and 15th of August, there's a national holiday called Oban where we could go to the family grave and light a fire of barley to lead them back to the family house so they can protect us. Many elderly Japanese pray in the morning, offering fruit, rice, sake, rice wine to their family shrine. Anyway, please forgive me for the detour. I shall continue with my story. The Chinbo Cliffs can be separated into 4 main parts: the cliffs itself, a red bridge where the bodies wash up, an island that the red bridge connects to the mainland, and it is said to be the resting place of spirits of the deceased, and a statue of Shinto god in a tunnel, which is said to show displeasure in his face if something bad will happen. We arrived at the cliffs around 3 a.m. and went directly to them. There is a total of about 10 of them, and we stood at the end of them and looked out. I saw nothing, as did several other people, but a member of our group seemed to be losing his strength in his legs, and we had to help him walk. Then we headed over to arguably the most haunted area of the cliffs, the telephone box where many suicide victims make their last calls to their loved ones. We took a video on one of the guy's cell phones. When we played it over, at the 19-second mark, we could hear a woman screaming in the background, "Stop, please stop, don't do this," saying this over and over again. Needless to say, we left in a hurry after that. We headed over to the bridge, which legend has it that the hands of those who had died would reach up and cross the bridge. We did not linger, nor did we cross the bridge to the island. Rumors had always flown that people who went there would carry more than a single spirit. We left and went to the tunnel. We drew straws to see who would go see the statue. I was third, and when I entered, I found to my immense pleasure that the statue seemed to be smiling, like it was blessing me. However, the last member of our group was not so lucky. He came out and told us that the face showed displeasure, disgust, and hate. I called my friend the other day to see how he and his family was doing. He immediately went into the story of our friend, who was the unlucky victim of the statue. He had suffered a major breakdown, quit school, lost his job, and broke up with his longtime girlfriend, then disappeared. They found him on the island, under the shrine, sobbing. My first experience was when I went to Japan for a family visit over the summer. It's been a long time since I visited them. I was only 15, and that's when it happened. Before I went to Japan, some of my friends would tell me ghost stories about Japan. I thought they were just teasing me, so I ignored them. When I arrived, it was going well. The first week of my stay in Japan was going very fine, but I felt as though a shadow was following me. I kept having this feeling like someone had been watching me for a while. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was still sleepy. I don't even know why I decided to get up, but when I looked over to my shadow, I found another shadow behind my shadow. I quickly turned around, but no one was there. I was freaked out, so I went to talk to Mom and Dad, but they wouldn't listen to me. I went back to sleep, but felt a warm hand touch my forehead. I was scared, so I just pulled the blanket over my head and closed my eyes tight. The next morning, I talked to Grandma and told her all about it. She told me that it must be her late daughter's dead son, who died at the age of 17 of a fever a long time ago. She told me not to be scared because he wouldn't do any harm to me. Even if she said not to be scared, I was still scared. Ever since I told Grandma about it, she would tell me stories about the time when he was still alive and that he was a nice man. For some time, a few weird things happened, but I just ignored them or forced myself to sleep. Back in July of the year 2010, I had a trip to Okinawa, located on south of Japan. To be remembered, Okinawa is one of the places in Japan which had suffered the consequences of World War II, being attacked by US military. Because of that, many people died, including Japanese civilians, Japanese military, and US military. Since I already studied about Okinawa's story, I had a strange feeling that something spiritual will happen there before I visited Okinawa. I've already had another experience, but I'll submit it later. And Okinawa is one of the places that have a US military base. I believe that was on the second day of the trip. We were guided by a local person to an underground-made cave called Gamma, which used to be a local's people place of refuge in case of aerial bombing runs. And because of the low hygiene, many people had died there, such as children, women, elders, and even sick or injured people. That's not all. Even the Japanese military said to civilians, when the US soldiers come to you, suicide before they kill you all. Die for glory, die for Japan. The cave itself was slippery because of the rain and too dark, or should I say, pure darkness, pure black. Because of that, we have to move with hand lights. While we're advancing, we had a moment to turn off the lights to see how dark it was. The cave was also chilly rather than too cold. A few seconds later, I could have sworn I heard a woman's crying voice in the cave, but I noticed that wasn't the voice of the girls who were with us at the time. No, there were only 2 girls with us. And then I started to think myself, this is not a living person's voice. Later, we went out of the cave, and in order to confirm, I asked the girls if one of them cried, but the answer was, none of us cried there. And I asked the boys too, but same answer. I really wondered what the crying woman's spirit really wanted to tell us. I'm in Okinawa, and this all started a couple weeks ago. First, I kind of ignored it, but it kept going on. First, I thought I saw something from the corner of my eye. Next, while sleeping with the lights off, I saw the light light up a little. After that, in the middle of the night, I didn't feel part of the blanket down my foot, so I sat up and looked up, and the blanket was being lifted up a little. The other day I was hanging my clothes up, and I had a hanger on the bed. While hanging my clothes, I heard a noise. I turned around to see my hanger was now on the floor. I told my friend about it on the phone while in my room. After I hung up, I heard a whistle sound and I got cold. I had goosebumps on my arms. Recently, I was trying to fall asleep. I was laying on my side when I felt something on my back like it was pushing me a little. I ended up hearing the whistle sound yet again. The whistle sound is more frequent. It's a very faint whistle. I have no idea what it could be, but it hasn't hurt me. It's just like trying to get my attention and never leaves me alone when I try to sleep. And the last experience was when I was sitting in my room watching TV. I saw a goldish light orb in the corner of my wall, all the way up to the ceiling. I hope you guys can help me out. I'm out of ideas of what this could mean or be. And I'm so sorry if this sounds kind of jumbly or incoherent, but I wanted to get my thoughts down as fast as possible. Thank you so much. To make things a little more clear, I want to give a little background detail of the house that I lived in. The house was an older traditional style Japanese house. The kitchen and living room area was on the opposite side of the house from where the bedrooms, including mine, were. I also was the only one on the side of the house because my host mother was in the kitchen cooking supper and the rest of my host family was working out late. The cat was outside too. My bedroom door was a fancy sliding door that was made of frosted glass, so I would have seen someone walking by. Also, the ceiling in the hallway leading to the other side of the house from my bedroom is kind of low, because I'm an unnecessarily tall Canadian. It was a little bit before supper, and I wanted to go and relax in my room. I laid down on my bed and started to reflect on how my day went. As I laid there, I got a strange feeling. It was a kind of excited, eerie feeling. I looked towards my door. I stared at it when all of a sudden, a black, shadowy arm from the ceiling came down and knocked on the window of my door. I was flabbergasted. I went to my door cautiously and opened it. I looked up to the ceiling to find nothing there. At that moment, my host mother called me to supper. I ran to my host mother and told what had happened. She laughed at me and told me that I was just paranoid. Anyway, that night, I had a little trouble falling asleep. Any ideas? Or was I just hallucinating? In 1990, I was a corporal in the Marine Corps, counting down the last 6 months of my tour of duty at Camp Butler on the island of Okinawa. Being an NCO, I managed to get my own room. Although made for 2 people, the room was small. When you entered, there was a wall locker then a bunk on the other side, and on the far wall was a desk, a small fridge, and an end table situated near a window. Hanging on the wall above the bunk on the left of the room was an old, large mirror held in a strange-looking, heavy wooden frame. I took the bunk to the right. Having recently been promoted, most of my friends were of lesser rank than me, and I let them hide in my room whenever they needed to shirk any unwanted duty that came up. They never stayed long, though. At first, they would try to nap, but complained of angry, violent dreams. Arguments would break out, and even a few fistfights occurred over even the most trivial things. People would enter the best of friends, believe, angry, sad, or even depressed. A few of us were sitting around talking once, when one of them, who had entered in the best of moods, suddenly became upset about something and jumped at me, getting me into a chokehold that took the other 2 with him to release one from. Later he apologized and said he had no idea what had come over him. Feelings of dread, depression, and anger were only highlighted by the noises that came from the room. I can't even count the number of times the sergeant who lived in the room next to me would come banging on my door, telling me to turn down my music or the TV I had. The problem was, I was a very quiet person, only listening to music on my headphones and, on the rare occasion, I would watch TV, kept it down to a low volume. Numerous times he would complain about loud parties I was having, only to find that I was alone in my room, writing letters or reading when he came in to see what was going on. During this time, I had used an acoustic guitar and was writing my own songs. Since there was a lull in traffic out in the hall, and most people were away for the weekend, I decided to record a song I had just written to see what it sounded like. I'm a horrible singer, but wanted to hear how the words flowed with the song, so I turned on the recorder and very quietly strummed out my tune and sang along. I did this a few times until I had the way I wanted it, then listened to what I had. On the recording, I could hear the soft notes of the guitar in my horrible, whispery voice. Suddenly, I began to hear people howling like dogs. I shut the machine off and rewound it. Again, I could hear my feeble attempt at singing and then a chorus of people howling. It sounded as if they were making fun of my lack of musical talent. I was completely embarrassed and decided to wait until later to record my songs when I was completely alone. It did not hit me until later that the hallways and other rooms were empty at that time and that, upon listening again, the howling was coming from inside the room. The room had, to some degree, the same effect on me as it did everyone else, and it was easy to see that the mirror was causing it. When I had company, I noticed people would shy away from it. They would sit as far from it as possible and glance towards it now and then as if to make sure it hadn't moved. The mirror stood out, and although I used it, I didn't like to. I tried to avoid looking at it whenever I came or went, which was nearly impossible since it was so big. Once, after work was over for the day, but the sun still shining bright, I was getting ready to go out. It was the weekend, and I was to meet some friends nearby. I had showered and dressed and was about to leave when I remembered something I had left on the desk. Retrieving it, I went towards the door, quickly checking myself in the mirror. I stopped and looked again. I still have a hard time believing what I saw. There, in front of my own reflection, was the clear image of a human arm. It was tan and slightly dirty looking, stretched out as if to shake someone's hand. There was no body or blood or anything, just an arm from the shoulder to the fingers. I am unsure as to how long I stood there staring at it. A full 30 seconds at least, before it quickly faded away. It seemed as if I was in a trance the whole time, just looking at what should not be there. I couldn't move, or really even comprehend what I was seeing. Once it was gone, though, I came to feeling cold, as if I were going to faint. I bolted for the door. Not quite sure what to make of all this. I met my friends feeling strange and confused, but said nothing. I needed more time to think about it. Soon after, the friend who had me in the chokehold was promoted and moved in with me. It took a week, but he finally said what everyone else had been thinking. He told me he couldn't stand the mirror and refused to stay another night in the room if it was not removed from the wall. He couldn't pinpoint one exact thing, but he said that the mirror was really strange to him, like it had a strong sense of, well, evil. Hearing this, I blurted out my own story about what I had seen, and we both agreed to do something. There really wasn't any place to store the thing, and when we tried to toss it out, we were told by an anal superior we couldn't dispose of government property without proper permission and to put it back in the room. Yes, he kept checking to see if we did. So we took it off the wall, wrapped it in a heavy blanket, and placed it behind the refrigerator with the glass facing the wall. This sounds silly, but it worked. After that, there were no bad dreams or fights to deal with, and things were noticeably better. It felt like someone had turned on a switch, and all the darkness fell away just like that. We had one more room inspection before leaving Okinawa and returning to the States, so we cleaned everything up, but forgot to place the mirror back on the wall. The officer giving the inspection was a friendly, easygoing lieutenant, and he gave us only one bad mark: the wrapped-up mirror behind our fridge. When he asked why it was like that, my roommate, much to my embarrassment, told him the whole story. The lieutenant listened, nodded, and then ordered us to unwrap the mirror. He looked at it, nodded again, crossed off the one bad mark he had written down, and said, "Wrap it back up. It looks better that way." We did just that, leaving it covered up for the next tenants to find. Hey there, potential subscribers and viewers, and people who are used to my content. Thank you so much for listening to me. I'm sounding so confident. I'm sounding amazing, but I'm a little shithead, and I don't know what the hell I am talking about, because I'm not as good as you guys think I am, or so it may seem. Anyway, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, guys. I'm just really happy because this was a great video I feel like I made, and I'm really happy that I actually got through it without, issues. Anyway, comment, like, and subscribe, and tell me what you thought about this, as usual. Before I embarrass myself, I'm just gonna close out by saying that I love you guys, and you know for sure, the 20-minute video is what you guys were waiting for, and I delivered, because I love you. See you guys.